as it goes. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. We're very excited to have Tegan Kline from The Graph and its parent company, Node, with us today to speak with us, answer questions about her insights on crypto, and hopefully learn a lot from her background and her journey so far. So just as a quick primer, Tegan is a founder and cryptocurrency expert. She studied finance at the Zicklin School of Business, did a few years in traditional finance and investment banking at the likes of Bank of America and Barclays, broke into crypto in 2018, and since then, she's co-founded one and launched two other unicorns to date. Those include Node, The Graph, and Orchid. And today, she's co-founder and head of business at Node. So my name is Anupam. I'm a growth analyst at Encode. Logistically, I'm going to ask some questions first, get us started, and I'll hand things over to the audience because you don't want to hear me talk too much. So you have the option of asking face-to-face questions and turning on your mic. If you want to do so, please use the raise hand function, which is at the bottom. So you go to reactions and raise hand. I'm going to do it now, so you can see what that looks like. If you want to do that, we'll come around and get to you. Otherwise, chat is totally fine, and Steve and I will read out the questions to Tegan when we get to that stage. Any questions, just jump in the chat or raise a hand. And so I guess we'll get started. How are you doing, Tegan?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. Super excited for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So something I'm really interested in to kick us off is you studied finance, and so that's not necessarily technical. And so I'm wondering, what did you want to do when you were younger, and then maybe how that shifted at college, and how is that vision matched with where you are today?
Totally. I mean, I think the first career I ever wanted to have, I wanted to be a paleontologist and I wanted to like dig up dinosaur bones. And that's because I'm from a really small town in Ohio. And a lot of the people around me didn't believe in evolution because of like religious beliefs. And so I was always kind of educating on the evolution and like the Big Bang and all of these things. And it's kind of evolved since that you can have one like religion plus evolution, which has been exciting to see. But then from there, I was really good at like business. I was really good at math. I really enjoyed philosophy and physics. But naturally, I accepted a full scholarship to Baruch in New York City, which is a finance school. And so when I arrived there, I didn't really know which direction I wanted to take my career. And I was like, what's the best thing you can do coming from this school? And it was like investment banking at a bulge bracket bank. And so that's what I kind of set my sights on. I learned about Bitcoin in 2011. So while I was in school, and that's really where the seed was planted. Had I understood more about monetary policy at the time, I probably would have dove in head first, but I kind of put it on the back shelf, went this traditional Wall Street path. And then it was when I learned about Ethereum in 2016 that I really like the light bulb went off and I found my passion within that, which I was always searching for. It definitely was not in finance. And I really saw the opportunity using Ethereum to kind of create a new internet, to create a new financial system that kind of works more fairly for everyone, removing some of these like intermediaries that sit in the middle that like take a lot of the money and yeah, the value. And so that's really when I kind of dove in head first and started researching the space.
Awesome. So what drew you to join The Graph when you did?
Yeah, great question. So I had known Yaniv, the founder of The Graph, one of the founders of The Graph, for a really long time. I had met him, I think in like 20, maybe it was like 2018, 2019, through a friend, Chelsea. And we had went to an event together and he told me like about some of the like challenges he's faced as like being the project lead for The Graph. And it was through those stories that I really understood his value set, and like he took decentralization seriously, he took like open source tech seriously, all the values of like Bitcoin and Ethereum I saw within him. So that's when the seed was planted. But it was really at ETH Denver. I had just left Orchid. I was like jobless for the first time since like 16 and just kind of exploring my options. And I was hanging out at the Graph booth, really like learning about the Graph. Yaniv had said like he wanted potentially like me to come to help them with fundraising, and like to do fundraising for a project, like you really have to believe in that project. And so I was doing my diligence, and Eva Balin kind of explained it to me as like this global graph of like connected data. It's like all of the world's data, like in a verifiable way, and like supporting, you know, all of the Web3 and crypto ecosystem and universe. And it was exciting to like, one, give people that like equal opportunity to have like all of the data like public and verifiable. Like that is so like, that's giving like each individual so much power, but also like being able to not having to pick between these different ecosystems, which can kind of be tribal, and really like being there to unite all of those ecosystems together. So yeah, naturally I kind of gravitated towards the graph, and also like enabling all of these different use cases. And it was after that like DeFi summer happened and that really took off, and the graph was really like the powering a lot of that.
Fantastic. So you touched on a lot of this in your answer just now, but I'm wondering what ingredients have made the graph as successful as it is today?
Oh man, I mean, I would say like one, this is only the beginning, like there's so much more to go, but I would say like the team is just really excellent. Like everyone executes very flawlessly, and wears multiple hats and like rolls up sleeves to get things done. And also just like Yaniv, Giannis, and Brandon, like the original co-founders of the graph, like their expertise in developer tooling, when they came to build an application on Ethereum, they noticed that this very core piece of the stack was missing. And so they set out to build that piece of the stack. And now developers all over are enabled to like create really beautiful and easy to use applications, because it's so much easier to build on blockchains now that we have this core piece of the stack. But I think like the team is just like an execution machine, like always shipping, and really getting the right leaders in the right places, like Eva Balin stewarding the Graph Foundation, bringing in core developers. Like there are now 5 individual teams contributing on the graph into this grand vision. And also just like having a research team really like putting a lot of thought in around the token economic design and incentive structure, because incentives are everything. And so I think like the graph token economics, like the GRT token economics, are really well thought out, and the incentive structures are well thought out. Yeah, I mean, there's so many components to this. Also like focusing on the right stakeholder groups at the right time, and really like making sure you're fostering that community is really important as well.
Great. And on a similar note, what skill set do you think you've been able to bring to the table that's allowed you to stand out like you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming from traditional finance, like I have that hazing in place. Like I can work 100 hours a week if I need to get something done. But also like in launching Orchid, I had that launch experience. So I had been through it once. I was able to bring all of those learnings to the graph and help with that launch. And really make sure that everyone around, like everyone in the crypto space knew about the graph launch when it was happening. And I think that that was like a really important moment. And it was important to kind of educate people ahead of that. And so I really bring like the business mind, like I lead the business team. There's partnerships, legal, operations, even solutions engineers that kind of live within that business team. And there's just like an amazing group of people that are really like driving the space forward, not just with the graph, but also like Web3 as a whole. But yeah, I've been able to kind of like sharpen those skill sets. And it's really like being a leader in the space is really about sharpening those skill sets so that you make the right decision in the moment, because you don't have a long time to like make decisions when you're in a leadership role. And I think that that's something that's like cultivated over time.
Awesome. And so other than the skills you've mentioned there, what other skills would you say are important for somebody who's trying to take the dive into crypto today?
Yeah, I mean, we're creating a new internet, we're creating a new financial system. So like every skill set across the globe is needed in this space. So like whatever you do, it's applicable to the crypto and blockchain space. The exodus is really on from Web 2 to Web 3, and also centralized finance. We hired Kyle on our team from Goldman. So really like top talent from a lot of these companies are joining into the space, and you can do anything. So you can, if you're technical, you can be, you know, front end, back end, full stack engineer, solutions engineer. If you want to be more like front facing and like talking to people, there's like tech support. If you're technical, but you aren't like, you don't want to code. But then there's also things on the business side. So partnerships, business development. Like if you do sales, that's a great like transition to a role like business development. Fundraising is another big thing, even like community development, social media management, marketing, like everything. So really whatever you do, it can be applied.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about your ambitions for Edge and Node beyond the graph. Like what else you guys
Yeah, I mean, our vision, so we believe Web3 is the future of the internet and that all of Web2 will move into Web3 and we will have like a big societal shift. We want to get people the access to information that they need to be able to make good decisions and be able to like find their truth and find their passions. We really like believe in like equitable and transparent systems that work for the people rather than like working for just a few people at the top. And I think like that's kind of what Web3 unlocks. But with Edge and Node, we're really focused on like helping people solve the world's most pressing problems. And we think like bringing this technology is a great way to unlock some of these pieces. So it's been exciting to see all the use cases built within the Web3 space. Like it started with DeFi, like DeFi Summer. So like a lot of the traditional finance space came in, but then NFTs and like digital art. And that brought an entire new group of people, like creatives, but now also with DAOs, like you can have a DAO for any like society, like any one of society's problems, you can form a DAO around it and like contribute to solving that problem. Like that's so powerful. So I'm excited to see like the even more use cases that we can't even imagine today be created.
Oh, great. And I've noticed that you have a very big vision for the future in terms of democratizing data and access. So are there any resources or experiences that you've had that have shaped that worldview that you have about democratizing data and really opening things up for everybody?
Totally. I mean, I come from like very humble beginnings in Ohio, like a very small town. Oh, I was like by no way like the smartest kid in my class. There were so many smart kids with me in school, and I was one of the few that was able to kind of leave and pursue bigger ambitions. And I think like with that, all we need to do is like what one thing that we can do to contribute to change that is help people get access to tools and also like the support that they need. And I think like back then it was difficult, like the internet had only kind of just, just begun and like the Web2 had only just begun. But now I think like you can be anywhere in the world and we can bring this to you. And so I think that that's really kind of shaped that. Like I'm so passionate about this because I think it can really like bring these tools to people all across the globe. And like how much better of a world will it be if people are like in their truth, if they found their passions and they're building towards those passions instead of just being in like basic survival mode to like get food and feed their families and like have enough money to like, yeah, sustain themselves. So that's what I'm excited about in the space.
Awesome. Okay, so last question before we hop off into the chat and give it away to everybody else. I'm wondering, is there something that you know now that you would have rather have done earlier in your career or your education that you'd wish you'd done early that people can do now?
I think just like the tools are out there, so go and find them. Like if you don't know how to get started, a good hack is reach out to people that are doing what you want to be doing and ask for an informational interview. This is how I broke into banking. This is how I got my start in crypto. Like reach out to like the people that you respect in this space and just ask for like a 30-minute informational interview. Say you want to break in and learn from them. And this is a good hack too to do before you're like interviewed. You can ask these people that are working in these roles the questions that you're likely going to get in an interview and learn from their answers and their experience. So I guess that's one thing, just like the tools are out there. And I wish I would have done that more throughout my life. And even now, like I should be taking advantage of like talking to other business leaders and like learning from them. It's something I actually need to do more of.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got some great questions in the chat and we'll get started. So our first one is from Peng. She asks, do you think there are enough women in crypto and what more can be done to encourage more women to enter the space?
Yeah, there's definitely not enough women in crypto. I think, it's definitely still more of a male dominated industry. I do like, this is one of the reasons why I'm speaking today and why I speak and educate so much is like, I want to be one of the voices that, I am a woman. I am one of the people in this space, like one of the people in this ecosystem. And I want to help encourage other women to like see women in this community and feel empowered to join the space. I think like as women, we need to do a better job of like helping and empowering other women in this ecosystem. And then, just like uniting together and helping each other and kind of forming this tribe. But it's difficult. It's like, it is a male dominated industry. And I think a lot of women can be intimidated by that. I think we need to raise more women up. We need to like start making sure like women are on cap tables, like they are investors, and leadership positions as well.
Great. And so our next question comes from James. I'd say, how and did your Web2 experience prepare you for Web3?
Yeah, so I was never in like quote unquote big tech, but in banking, we use like Web2 systems and technologies, and it was just like so broken. Like the technology system inside banks is so broken because banking grew so quickly that they were just like throwing stuff on the stack, and like a lot of the banking infrastructure is just totally broken. But also just kind of seeing like there's so much redundancy. Like each bank has its own tech stack and it's centralized. And then like another bank builds that same thing and it's centralized. Like in Web3, you can just remove that redundancy, have the protocols that are open public goods that anyone can use. There's no scarcity. And then you have like the UX and UI on top. And if one of those banks goes away, all that developer work goes away. But in Web3, just like that user experience goes away and you still have that tech stack. So it's like, yeah, it solves a lot of problems when it comes to like redundancy, and then also just like getting people access to what they need when it comes to building things on the web.
Great. Next question comes from Kay Trussell. Are you hiring, and what projects are most likely to get a grant? I guess we handle those separately.
Totally. Yeah. We're hiring, we have a ton of open roles. We're hiring for like a social media manager. We're hiring engineers. We're hiring a writer. So if any of those roles resonate, you can check them out at edgeandnode.com. But almost everyone in the space is hiring. There's like a very big need for talent. And so you can, find a role across the space. And then projects that are likely to get a grant from the Graph Foundation. So the Graph Foundation puts out different like RFPs on specific things that they want to see, but also you can submit any idea to the Graph Foundation. They also have kind of cohorts, so like what they want to see, but you can submit any idea to them. Like one thing I want to see is like Robinhood snack style like newsletters come out of that. So you could have some like an idea like that. Someone else got a grant in like Middle America. They got a grant. They ran a podcast. It's GRTIQ podcast. And the leader of that podcast actually joined the Graph Foundation full time a couple of weeks ago. And it was like such a successful program. They're still running that podcast, but that's the power. Like you can be anywhere in the world. You can start participating in a small way, maybe get a grant for something you're passionate about, but you're doing it as a hobby. And then potentially like join the ecosystem full time. And like, even for me, like I went to ETH Denver and learned more about the graph. Just going to that event alone, like changed the course of my life. And so like go to events, meet people, and get involved.
Great. Next question is from Patrick. He asks about your thoughts of MEV.
My thoughts on MEV. Oh man, we could go for a while. I mean, I would say I personally like, it has its pros and its cons, but I don't know if I could speak intellectually on that at the moment.
All good. Olivier asks, is it important to have technical skills when entering crypto?
So I think it depends on what you want to do, which role you want to do. I would say you need to be able to understand the tech enough to translate it if you want to be in kind of like business development or like a marketing role. So, but I would say like you don't need to be a coder. You might want to try coding just so you understand like what's involved. But yeah, I would say like you don't necessarily have to be like a technical or an engineer.
Great. Next question is, I'm going to try to not butcher this, that Peng. Who are your inspirations in crypto, and are there any female figures in that list?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Eva Balin of the Graph Foundation is definitely a huge inspiration. She's brilliant, and she kind of helped me to think about the graph early days. I would also say like Vitalik Buterin is a huge inspiration. Satoshi Nakamoto, I don't know if Satoshi is a woman or in that group there's a woman, but I think like the values of these individuals, that like they take their values very seriously. Also like Sam Williams of Arweave, I think shares like similar values. And so like when approaching a project or even just a token, like participating in that token, I think it's important to like understand the values of those ecosystems and the founders behind those ecosystems.
Great. Ong asks, as a former banker, do you think banking is going to embrace DeFi?
The traditional banks. So I think that they'll likely potentially trade it and like get people access to crypto. I don't think that banks will like move on to DeFi necessarily. I think it would be like a big shift. They might have like pieces or maybe spin up another entity that participates, but I think it's more likely that the people in banking are going to like leave to join this ecosystem more than anything else.
Cool. No pressure on this one. Paulo asks, can you share some spoilers about what will be introduced on Graph Day on June 2nd?
Oh my gosh, there will be a lot of big announcements there. I will say, so what's one interesting fact is the Robert Leshner of Compound, the Compound token was actually born at Graph Day because of like the ideas planted there. So I'm excited to kind of see what's born out of Graph Day, but it's happening in June in San Francisco. It's going to be a great event. Tickets haven't gone on sale yet, so make sure, you're watching once they do, but there'll be a lot of announcements there.
Awesome. Van asks, where do we see Edge and Node in 10 years?
Edge and Node in 10 years, oh man. Well, the Graph is one of Edge and Node's first protocols. We also have another project called Everest, and it's kind of like this decentralized LinkedIn. It's more like a hobby project, but it's where anyone can go to see all of the applications that exist within Web3. So that way you can see, like, if you're interested in one topic, you can go there and then see like the different dApps and projects within that space. But I think we'll have a lot more that to come. We're really building like 10, 15 years in the future. And so the Graph is like one core component of the Web3 stack, but there's so much that you can do once the entire decentralized Web3 stack comes together. And so we're really looking forward to that future.
Great. So Han asks, do you think decentralization is a force for good? Or maybe speak to make the argument for it, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think with decentralized technology, we're making way for a brand new set of use cases. And there are a lot of like like with Facebook going like metaverse and like Twitter embracing NFTs. It's like, thank you for the validation, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for like the brand new use cases. We're here to like give power back to the individuals. We're here to like stop making users the product on Web 2 in Web 3, and like decision-making, ownership, power, like all of that should be in the hands of the users. It should not be in the hands of like a centralized company overseeing all of that. And so I think it is a force for good, but I do think we need to do it right. And we need to make sure decentralization isn't like corrupted by like these Web 2 companies or even like Web 2.5 companies in the space that are like saying that they're Web 3, but they're not. So I think like, so long as we do this right and we keep the values that like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the Graph have, I think that it will be a force for good. Absolutely.
Great. So TNT asks about Metaverse and NFTs. I'm going to tweak that question a little bit. Metaverse and NFTs are obviously an emerging world. What should we keep in mind as we check out projects to see whether they're worth our time or not?
Yeah, I would say like 99% are not worth your time right now. Like we are still building that decentralized Web3 stack. Everything needs to be like decentralized, open source, and permissionless. And right now we've seen like the NFT space grow so quickly before the infrastructure was ready. So I'm excited to see, like, I mean, you can look at Moxie's post and see like some of the failures within NFTs right now, that all of those need to be fixed before we can really get excited about NFTs. But with the metaverse, like there's like this version that's like this dystopian future of everyone like on their Oculus and, you know, in the metaverse. But I think one thing that's really exciting about the metaverse is like, imagine having this universe that you can plug and play scenarios before like bringing those to real life. Like imagine what you could do with like surgery or medicine in the metaverse. So I think like use cases like that can be really powerful and like much more optimistic than like that dystopian future.
Fantastic. Katya asks, outside of crypto, what causes are close to your heart?
I would say like, so I'm really big on like ridding yourself of trauma. I think like trauma is one of the things that really impact humans, and like you can throw prescription pills on it, but that's not like fixing the trauma. And so I'm really big on like natural ways to like release trauma from your body. And so, yeah, I would say like breath work, like talk therapy, all of these things that might like have been taboo a few years ago. I think it's really important for individuals to like do those kind of perform those ways to remove trauma, because like we all have trauma. Like I've had an easy life, but I still have a ton of trauma. And so I would say that's one thing. And then also just like, I mean, bringing more equal opportunity to people across the globe is what I'm really like passionate about. And so, yeah, I try to like bring those passions to what I do on a daily basis. And Web3 definitely consumes me, but I try to kind of take mental health breaks from that as well, and like go hiking and snowboarding and all of those things.
Great. Yeah, I think you touched on some really important things there. So that's great. Angelo asked quite a long question, so I'm going to tweak this one a bit. What is the right balance to strike between timing of achieving funding as a startup while maintaining a good speed of growth, where those two extremes are very fast growth and early dilution, or late funding and slow growth? Like, what's the right balance to strike there?
Man, it's relative to each project. I think it's really dependent on like what will you need to sustain and to be able to grow at the pace that you want to grow. Like with the graph, it's not like you can just, bring in a ton of engineers. Like they actually have to like be together, do the work. You can't just like increase growth 100 times by bringing 100 engineers on board. So I think it's really like understanding that dynamic. And then with fundraising, like you want to strike when the iron's hot. Like right now it's pretty hot. Like everyone has a ton of money, and that's also a component. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be based on your specific growth. It's like, is the money there? Are VCs excited about it? Okay, like take that money, because who knows what that landscape will look like in 3 or 4 months. And like VCs, like they like what's hot, what's trending. And so they'll move on, and then they'll ebb and flow, they'll come back. Yeah, and I would say like also, because we're in an environment right now where it's really easy to fundraise, make sure you're bringing in the right people, like people that really believe in your mission, not people that are only there for like a quick flip in to make more money. I think you can be kind of choosy around who you bring in, and you're building this tribe around you. So yeah, be intentional about it.
Great. Matthew asks, can you share an update on the Graph's migration path to mainnet?
Yeah, so migration has been a huge focus. So with the Graph, there's the hosted service and the decentralized network. We started with the hosted service to kind of prove product market fit and get developers the tools that they needed to build open APIs. We launched the decentralized network a year ago, and right now just Ethereum is supported on the decentralized network. In July of last year, it went permissionless, so anyone can spin up a subgraph on that decentralized network. The migration, there are about over 300 dApps on that decentralized network today. There are 31,000 lifetime developers on the hosted service, so we still have a really far way to go. That being said, we kind of waited to do a push around migration. Even though it's permissionless, we can kind of still move it along. We wanted to wait until like that process was super smooth. So now it is, and that push is kind of on. I think Constitution DAO. So Constitution DAO happened on the Graph's decentralized network. We saw a huge bump in queries because of that. Juicebox is the project and protocol behind that, and they actually are doing the Julian Assange DAO as well. And so we've seen like a massive influx of GRT queries on the decentralized network because of that. But yeah, I'm super excited to deprecate the hosted service in full. 31 networks are on the hosted service, and just Ethereum's on the decentralized network today, but excited to kind of move all of that over and deprecate the hosted.
Awesome. MG asks, why the name Graph? Any implication to Euler's graph theory?
Oh, interesting. So the graph is kind of like the web. So you have like this graph of all the data in the world. And it's on-chain data, but we believe that will be all of the world's data. And so the graph will kind of become this household name similar to like the web, and we'll be able to lowercase the and the G, like the G in graph and the T in the in the future. So I'm looking forward to that, but it really is like this public good, like the web.
Fantastic. Agnieszka asks, what do you think of the ENS row at the moment?
In terms of what do you mean by row? Or just like the direction that they're going with what happened with Brantley?
I imagine so.
So I think it's a tricky situation, and it's unfortunate. What Brantley said was like very bad, and like I disavow any of that kind of like hate speech. That being said, I think people should be free to have beliefs. There are of course consequences for your words, and everyone should know that. But I don't think we should be taking a position of like censorship in Web3. And I think it's a really dangerous thing to do. And one thing that I've learned from Web2 is like once you censor like 5 people because they're really bad. But then where does it stop? Like the line keeps moving. And then all of a sudden, like you're censoring people like every week or every day or every hour. And I don't believe in that, right? I think you vote with your feet, you vote with like your money and your time. And if you don't believe in someone, if you take your delegation away. But I don't think people should be fired because of their beliefs, unless they're like harming other people or like saying that people should be harmed. But it's a hard situation, and it's very tricky.
For sure. Joe asks, how do you see the role of community and governance evolving in crypto?
Yeah, so the DAOs seem to be quite a mess right now. So I think DAOs are super exciting. I do think you have to get the structure right. I do think like it's hard to have a DAO that's like 50 to 100 people big. I think it's easier when it's a little bit smaller. I like the idea of these sub DAOs within a DAO. But I think it can be really powerful, and it can be like a really great tool for us. We just need to kind of have the right governance structure in place. I know the Graph Foundation is also researching DAOs right now because they want to DAOify the council. But it's important to be very thoughtful about how you put those things in place.
Great. So that kind of touches on Angela's question there. We have another question, and it's a bit broad. How do you see our relationship with data evolving in the future? So let's say like 10 years, 50 years in the future.
Yeah, I think data is powerful. And right now, like Web2 companies are kind of gatekeeping that data because they use it to like monetize and like sell us ads and like learn our behaviors. In Web3, the data should be open and transparent so long as it's not like private data. And what we've seen with that today is like so much more innovation. Like DeFi was super transparent with the data, and you saw like so much innovation explode within the DeFi space. So I think in the future, we'll be able to have like fully public and verifiable data using the graph, and any individual can verify that data themselves in like a low cost, easy way. But also I hope we can kind of solve zero knowledge and like the cryptography piece of things, so that we can have like, if you want to put like, I don't know, if you want to apply for a loan using personal information, that you can apply ZK to that and it's fully private when it needs to be. And then finding the right balance between those two will be definitely like one to strike, but I'm looking forward to that in the future. I think we really want to like open things up so that people can innovate without these walled gardens.
Great. So another potentially spoiler question, so no pressure. What is the likelihood of an announcement on Graph Day for the Graph moving to non-EVM chains?
So actually the Graph already integrated its first non-EVM chain. It was Near. And so a lot of the work that was done on integrating non-EVM chains in Graph Node were done with that integration. So it's really easy to kind of plug and play that to other non-EVM chains. So I'm looking forward to kind of adding support for others more quickly. But I think the next on the docket are Solana, Polkadot, and Cosmos. So I'm looking forward to those coming to fruition.
Great. Bio asks, what are your thoughts on anonymity in the Web3 space? So are there anonymous players on the Graph team? And so how do you build trust while maintaining anonymity?
Totally. I mean, there's a ton of anonymous individuals within the Graph ecosystem. I think that, it can be powerful. It can also be like negative, just because like when you're anonymous, you can say things that are like much more hurtful than if you have accountability to those words. But I would say like within the Graph ecosystem, I mean, it's great. I think people should have the power to be able to like get a loan within the ecosystem and participate without giving up their identity. I also think like people all across the world should be able to participate anonymously if they should choose to. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that within the Graph ecosystem and just Web3 as a whole.
Great. Vishal asks, so if Near is supported, is Polkadot support close by?
So with one thing within the Graph ecosystem, we've learned that we don't like to give timelines around engineering work. It was like the number one way to upset your engineers. So it's difficult to kind of put a timeline on it, but Polkadot support is coming, and it's good to know that the community is excited about it.
Great. Motion asks, what would you be doing if you weren't in crypto right now?
Oh man, I don't even know. I hope I wouldn't still be in banking because it was not a fun time. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think I would be in tech. I don't think I would be in finance. I would need to find like something that I'm passionate about. Beyond that, maybe like something like open source, without a token or something.
Great. Angelo asked, and maybe you can speak to your experience dealing with VCs in the past. Other than financial support, what kind of support can you expect from a VC in this area?
Yeah, I mean, don't expect anything other than financial support. Otherwise, you're just going to be disappointed. But the other things that you can ask for are you can ask to be connected to different media publications. They generally have like connections at like top media publications to help you with your press, also like podcasts. They can also support the network, of course. Like most of the graph supporters are actually delegating in that ecosystem. Some of them even have indexers, which is really cool. And then you can also like, they can help you with recruiting, like connecting you to recruiters, but also connecting you to potential people that you could hire. But yeah, I would say like there's not a lot, and you can ask them to like write blogs and help to educate. But I would kind of keep it to a minimum, because really what they're there to do is kind of support you financially and help guide you. But you really want to talk to like builders in the ecosystem before making decisions. Like it's good to kind of gather feedback from all across the space, but you want to talk to like other founders that have gone through it, as opposed to just like leaning on advice from VCs.
Awesome. Bio asks, maybe you can speak a little bit to the importance of branding in crypto and any tips that you have for projects in that regard.
I think branding is super important. Like when I joined the graph, one of the things that I noticed was just the graph, the people that understood it were the developers, which is great. Like fostering the developer community at first is like the most important thing. But in crypto, like you need to expand that beyond just developers and kind of condense it in a way that people can understand easily. So one piece of advice that I have when it comes to branding is you want to segment your groups, like your community, understand like who you're marketing towards, but having like a one quick liner on a way that people can like easily understand what you're working on is super helpful, to just like plant the seed. And so like what Google does for the web, the graph does for the blockchain. So that's kind of what we thought of as like this analogy to something that people are very familiar with. Most people have used Google or something similar. So I think that's important, is just like having an analogy that people can kind of easily get their minds around that. And then you can start to introduce like all the differences. But first you have to get them excited about something small and easily digestible.
Great. Kupu asked about the narrative of crypto. So I'm going to tweak that a bit. Maybe you can speak to what developments have to happen where people prior to mass adoption and people's belief in crypto worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's really hurt us is a lot, like some people have come in just for the money and created like scams and then left. And there's a lot of that. I would say like, maybe 1 to 2% of what's being built right now will exist 10 years in the future. But not everyone is thinking long-term, they're thinking short-term, and not everyone is thinking like they want to revolutionize the internet. They're thinking, how can I make a ton of money by tomorrow? So I think like some things like that have really like hurt the space and set the space back. But I think like the narrative is definitely changing, right? Like when I got into crypto, I knew like the money I put in Bitcoin and Ethereum, Bitcoin and Ethereum at the time, I knew that could go to zero. Today, I don't think it can go to zero anymore. Like, I don't think that's a risk. It's been so widely adopted. Over 33% of institutional money is in crypto, like is in a digital asset, like institutional money is involved. And then like more than like 18% of retail individuals in the US are involved. And so when you know what that means is like, now it's politically unpopular to say you don't like crypto, to say you want to ban crypto. And so I think it's crazy to see like how far we've come. And then I think like we've definitely gone through like a brand change when it comes to like crypto. And now people are just like blanket calling everything that was crypto Web3. And I think because some of the negative connotations that exist within crypto. So yeah, it's interesting to watch it evolve. I think Web3 to me has a very specific meaning, and it's like a brand new platform for fully decentralized applications to live. So like removing all of those centralized pieces in Web3 so that you can kind of shift the power back to the user is super important.
Great. On a similar note, maybe you can speak to the role of regulation in this space going forward, like which developments you would maybe discourage and which ones you'd support.
Yeah, I think, I think we need to speak to regulators more, like founders in the space, users of the space, like really need to kind of help to educate when it comes to regulation to avoid kind of blanket regulations. I think it's been nice it's been a positive and a benefit to have kind of like this gray area when it comes to regulations, because you don't want to blanket set regulations because it will kill innovation. I think having that gray area has also harmed like the US specifically, because a lot of people have gone offshore where there's more clarity. So it's tricky, right? It's like a tricky balance to strike. And so I think like a lot of the institutional players have also been left out of crypto because there aren't clear regulations. And so that leaves opportunity for people that have been left out of the financial system or the previous tech boom to like front run those institutions, which is kind of exciting. So yeah.
Great. What's one thing that you think should be tokenized in the near future that isn't already?
Oh man. I mean, I think like a lot of what we need for like this stack, it has been, right? Like the pieces are all there. We just need to like connect all those pieces together. And that's just going to take time. So I think like over the next 6 to 12 months, like that'll all come to fruition. And then we'll have like this decentralized stack. And then you can have all these different use cases on top of that. But I think like the things that don't yet have tokens are the things like are beyond my imagination at this time.
Nice. In terms of terminology, Web3 or crypto, which term is better to use and why?
I mean, to me, like you don't have one without the other, right? It's like I remember in 2017 there was this narrative from all like the institutionals, like IBM was like, forget Bitcoin, that's a scam, but blockchain, that is cool. And it's like, well, we've had like federated databases for like 30 plus years. There's nothing new with that. Like you need the token in order for it to be interesting, in my opinion. Like the tokens are how you enable the community. It's how you like get people paid commensurate to the value that they're bringing. The problem is like you have to have a really thoughtful economic design when it comes to your token economics that 99% of projects don't have. And they need to be like utility tokens in the network. Like that's the point of them, or it should be the point of them. And so, yeah, I think like I'm a fan of both crypto and Web3.
Awesome. So we have another question. Maybe you can speak to the graph's goals for the mid and long term.
Yeah, so I mean, the graph is a huge ecosystem. It's like a fully like decentralized protocol these days, and so there are now a bunch of people participating and contributing, and like many, like over 5 companies participating individually. So it's hard to speak on all of it, but I would say like from my standpoint, like the biggest goal is like migration, getting that finalized, getting the hosted service deprecated. The graph is also, we're working on verifiable indexing and querying. So applying like zero knowledge and snarks to queries so that you can verify that data as an individual, which is really exciting. So stay tuned for our research report on that. But there's just like so much happening in the graph ecosystem, and I don't think the foundation has announced the roadmap publicly yet. So I'm excited for when they do, because I think like the scale at which like people in the graph ecosystem are thinking about it is pretty insane. And one of the teams that joined the graph is the Guild, which is like a top GraphQL company. They worked with like Facebook and Uber, and the graph uses like GraphQL language, and it was created by Facebook that a lot of Web2 devs use. And so it's crazy that like one of the top GraphQL communities just joined Web3 like full time. Like that's huge. So yeah, it's just exciting to see like all the brilliant minds coming in to participate in this like global graph of data.
Awesome. From Nisha, maybe you can speak about your thoughts on stablecoins and maybe separately CBDCs, especially out of the US now.
Sorry, what was that?
Your thoughts on stablecoins, if there's anything. It's a bit of a broad question.
Oh, like CBDCs. I mean, I think I believe in like disrupting power, and I think like CBDCs are like more dangerous than cash and fiat, right? Like a global surveillance network of money that is controlled by a government. Like I think that's kind of terrifying in my opinion. And so I think like it's going to happen, and it's another great like validation, just like the blockchain, not Bitcoin, from IBM was a great like validation to the space. Just like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter getting involved in the space, I think it's like a great validation of the space. That's kind of my view.
Great. From Nazar Tool, is Graph working with companies outside of crypto, and is there an interest for Graph services outside of crypto in general?
So we've really taken kind of a crypto first approach, like decentralization first approach. There are a lot of companies that use the graph that aren't decentralized. So for example, like Coinbase queries the Uniswap subgraph all the time, CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, they're all like that. It's the fastest way to get on-chain data. So you're going to have like decentralized applications using it, but then you're going to have centralized companies using those decentralized applications for that data. So I think that's always going to happen, but I wouldn't say like we're focused on like bringing the centralized Web2 companies into the space by any means. We're like here to create a new system.
Great. From Stratos, is there a fit to be struck between the graph and traditional finance?
I mean, if traditional finance wants to decentralize and like give up control of like data and give up like any middlemen, then sure. But I would say, and we've definitely seen like a lot of people from TradFi, like myself included, join this space. So I welcome everyone with open arms. I think like that's more of like the way to get involved in this space and build like DeFi applications or join projects that are working on those.
Great. Maybe on the CBDC point, is there something that we can do in the crypto sphere to make sure that decentralized opportunities aren't kind of co-opted back into centralization?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's an important one. I think we just need to like build and we just need time to like finish this and Stacks, it's going to be like 10 times better, 10 times cheaper, 10 times faster, 10 times like easier to use. We just need time to get there. And so anyone who's like passionate about this space, who's not yet like made the jump into Web3, like I urge you to like now's the time, and there's nothing more exciting to be working on than this. And like what we're doing on a daily basis, like we're expanding reality on a daily basis. Like we are like we're inventing things on a daily basis. Like it is so exciting, and like the pace at which this space moves is so exciting. So yeah, don't wait to make the jump. Like you're still ahead of the curve. It's still super early. So like, yeah, get involved. And you don't have to join full time. Like you can be a contractor, you can like participate in DAOs, you can like write blogs, you can community management. Like there's so many things that you can do without like diving in head first, like I did, to kind of like, yeah, dip your toe in the water.
Great. From Raluca, how big is the Graph team currently?
Yeah, so the Graph Foundation, I believe, has 9 people full time. Node, which is one of the core developers within the Graph that I'm a founder of, along with the original founders of the Graph, we have about 55 people now. And then there's Figment, which is a massive company, but they have 10 people full-time dedicated to the Graph. Streaming Fast, I think, is around 15. And then there's the Guild and Semiotic, and I'm not sure how big those teams are, but there's a huge ecosystem. There's also over 150 indexers, there's curators, delegators, like the Graph ecosystem is huge.
Great. From Stratton, who are your favorite personalities in crypto, and who do you follow generally?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, like, of course, Vitalik. I would say Sam Williams of Arweave. I really enjoy kind of following him. We share a lot of similar like ideals and values. Yaniv, Eva. Who else is interesting to follow on Twitter? I mean, there's so many people in the Web3 space, and there are lists that you can find. Like there's even someone made a list of all the people within the graph ecosystem to follow. But you can find that for Web3 and just crypto more broadly.
Great. We have a new question. I was wondering if you could speak to the best advice you've received, crypto or not, just something that's contributed to your journey.
So I remember, I come from traditional finance. I moved from New York to San Francisco. I was like promoted at Barclays and doing sales and trading. And I remember I was on the sales and trading floor. I worked like my desk was in between 2 directors. So I had one director to my left and one director to my right. And the one director told me, like, Tegan, if I were your age, I would be in tech. I would not be in finance. And like the other director like punched him and he's like, yo, bro, like don't tell her that, because he didn't want like me to leave, obviously. But that was kind of like a wake-up call, right? It's like the people that you're working with, that you're learning from, are telling you like this industry is dying and go into tech. I think it was like nice of him to say, even though it was like against his best interest. And so I think like, listen to that. Like anytime someone tells you something that's against their best interest, like listen to that. But also like take that same advice, like join the crypto space, like above anything else. And like, don't be afraid to take risks while you're still able to.
Fantastic. And on a similar note, what advice would you give to people that are graduating and now entering the Web3 space, or at least thinking about it?
Yeah, so one, you're probably going to make a ton of mistakes along the way. You're probably going to join the wrong company that you're not super aligned with, and that's okay. I think like you'll get closer to your truth as you get experience in the space. But I would say like one way that I broke in is I would listen to events, listen to podcasts, go to events, listen to speakers. I would take notes. I'm like a big note taker. I believe in like taking notes on everything and having checklists. But I would reach out to those people. And if I was at the event, I would go up to them, shake their hand, introduce myself, ask for their card. And then I would reach out and ask for an informational interview. And everyone is so friendly in this space. Like almost everyone would either like get back to me or like at least get back to me. And then others would get on a call with me and I would ask them questions and learn from them. So I would say like find people that you respect and try to get on a call with them, listen to their podcast, like have intellectual questions to ask once you get on that call. And then the other thing is like there are a lot of people that don't have like the same values as like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the graph. And so make sure you understand people's values before working with them full time. And there's so many open opportunities right now. Like you can choose basically any like protocol you want, like everyone's hiring. So yeah, just figure out which ones you're aligned with and then like go for it. Another hack is like talking to people that are in a similar role as you at those protocols that you're trying to apply for and asking them like, what are your immediate needs? Okay, what are your long-term goals? And understanding like the needs and then work your way up. And then once you get on a conversation with the CEO or in an interview, you know, like all their pain points. So you can speak to those and say how you can like potentially fill those pain points.
Great. From Gao, we have, what do you consider to be the Web3 capital of the world right now?
Web3, what does that mean?
I guess the location where Web3 is really.
I think it's digital. Like, I don't think you necessarily have to be anywhere. Like, I do think within crypto, you need to be able to travel to events. You don't need to, but it's like very helpful if you can. And so when I was with Orchid, I think I traveled to like 23 countries in like less than a year. And so and then you would go to these events all across the world and you'll see the same people at those events over and over again. So I don't think it necessarily matters where you are in the world. You can participate on online events. But I think like there's a certain special, like, yeah, San Francisco is like a special place and I think it always will be. I think it's going through like hardship right now. But I think there's just like something magical about San Francisco where, you know, you go to dinner and people are talking about their crazy startup idea. Like you can't talk about that in New York, like you'll be like banished from the dinner. So I think there's something special and like magical about San Francisco that has that like startup culture. Like, yeah, so I don't think that will ever die.
Fantastic. Can you speak to your experience as a crypto founder? What qualities should a prospective crypto founder have to succeed?
Oh man, I think just like be yourself. And like one thing that I ascribe to is just like focus on your strengths and forget about your weaknesses. Like there's always someone that can be strong where you are weak. And so really understand your strengths and make your strengths even stronger. And just like your weak, like if you don't like to code, ignore coding and focus on what you are good at. And I think like that's like the best thing that's like helped me in my life. But I think like anyone can be a founder. You just like, you have to work hard and you have to like know your worth. And I think like knowing your worth is one thing that's difficult and it comes over time. And you'll learn when you like get into a role, if it's right for you or if it's not right for you. It's always important to like give your all and like do well in your role. But like the great thing about startups is like, there's so many, like you join to do like, for example, like when I joined the Graph, I was focusing on fundraising. Then I took on business development. Then I realized like there was no press. Like I have to learn how to do press and like PR. So I learned how to do that in like a month's time. And then it's like, and then I don't know how to do marketing. Like I'm an investment banker, but here I am like learning how to do marketing. And then I'm like, okay, I'm actually good at marketing. So I think like you'll learn that over time. Also, like I love hosting events and parties. It's funny because like people met me through events and they're like, oh, you're the events girl. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the events girl. But I really like doing that. I like doing like so many things. So you'll kind of like learn that over time, but don't try to like be strong where you are weak. Like it's not a good use of anyone's time.
Fantastic. And so you mentioned a couple podcasts earlier, and I guess there's a little more interest in, can you recommend a few more that people can check out?
Totally. Yeah. I really like the Bankless podcast though. Like they lack diversity on that show. There's not a lot of women there, but they have really great content. I also really love Laura Shin, like her podcast Unchained. She also has like you can look at Unconfirmed too. I think she deprecated that podcast, but you can still go back. And there's like a really cool like crypto 101. So yeah, those are two that I really enjoy. But I got on TikTok recently just to kind of like help provide some signal amongst all the noise. And I have a TikTok video that goes into like all the 6 podcasts that I recommend. So you can check it out.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we'll start to wrap things up. Tegan, is there anything you'd like to share before I close things out here?
No, this was really great. If anyone is thinking about breaking in, feel free to reach out to me. My Twitter DMs are open. It might take me a minute to get back because I do have an influx there, but yeah, feel free to reach out along your journey, and I'm happy to help provide guidance at any time. And yeah, super excited for all of you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tegan. This has been super informative. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope everybody else did too. We've got some cool events coming up at Encode, guys, so make sure you follow the link tree, and Steve's going to send some links in the chat now to keep on top of things. We've got a hack launching with Near tomorrow, so be sure to check that out. Lots of boot camps, lots of learning opportunities with us. Any questions, please feel free to check out the website or reach out to me directly with that email here, and we'll close things out. Thank you so much, Tegan.
Thank you so much. All right. Talk to you all soon.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.